Sir, we are going live in another 30 seconds.
Roger that.
Oh, very good. Okay, so I think we are on track now, 11 o'clock. So let us start. Anupam Joshi ji.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very good morning to those who are in India and good afternoon to those in Japan. As I see some registrations are there from that country as well. And welcome back, I must say, to the IJSC at IIMB webinar lecture series. Let me quickly introduce myself. I am Saideep Ratnam. I am the Chief Operating Officer at this center. India-Japan Study Center, or IJSC as it's known, is a center of excellence at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. And the focus of this center is basically to strengthen India and Japan bonds by promoting academic, industry, and societal linkages. And this webinar series is one such attempt wherein we are bringing in experts from both Japan and India and even a third countries to talk about the societal, technological, business, and other facets of life, which highlights both Indian and the Japanese perspectives. In this edition of this lecture series, we have with us today an eminent thought leader who has many facets to his very interesting personality. Anupam Joshi is a musical genius who serves the society, Indian society, Japanese society, by means of the musical instrument Sarod. Joshi-san has developed this thirst for music at a very young age. As per his recollection, it was, I think, 7. He was 7 when he was first introduced to the Sarod recital of the musical genius late Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. And Joshi-san, over the years, has developed real expertise in this instrument and has played extensively both in India and abroad. And he has also played this instrument, interestingly, in a Hollywood documentary. I think it's called Among the Believers, which also won an award at the Hollywood Film Festival. And apart from, of course, being a musical genius, he is also a linguist. He is very fluent in Japanese, and he is becoming fluent in Korean as well. And this itself shows the type of interest that he has. Is not, of course, music is his basic heart, closest to his heart, but language, culture, I think he has studied all this in a very extensively. And the topic for today, in fact, when we were having a chat, he was telling us many interesting aspects about all this. And the topic that we finally chose was identifying our shared identity between India and Japan. And the choice was triggered by, interestingly, because even I, though I have been to Japan many times, but to me, Japan and to the common man more so, is looked at as an isolationist culture. And but surprisingly, there are amazing similarities, as shared by Mr. Joshi with me and our team, between the Indian and the Japanese cultural and language practices. Today, Anupam San is going to talk to us about this subject, and which is very close to his heart. Basically, cultural similarities between these two great nations. Of course, he would have a formal presentation, but by and large, he will be sharing his thoughts directly from his heart. I have a great pleasure in inviting Mr. Anupam Joshi to this forum. And before I hand it over to Anupam San, I would like to tell you that Anupam San is ready to answer any queries that you may have, which he will, of course, take it at the end of his talk. You may ask them on the Q&A section of the webinar, and I'm sure he would attempt to answer as many as he possibly can, considering, of course, the time constraints. So over to you, Anupam-san.
Thank you so much, Saidit-san. A very good morning to all of you, people who are joining from India, and konnichiwa to everybody from Japan. First of all, I would like to thank IJSC for this opportunity, also IIBM for having me here and giving me an opportunity to connect with everybody on a topic that is very close to my heart. Having learning any language, I think it is based on a tripod which consists of history, the actual language, and the culture that any region follows. And any missing link of between any of these is a very incomplete exercise in itself. So taken so much to the language, driven to it, culture, and I couldn't help but notice so many cultural similarities between Japan and India in this process. And I have just found out a few things which linger on the surface very eminently, and put them together for the talk today. Just a few disclaimers before I start. I have deliberately avoided any kind of similarities that Japan and India have through the roots of Buddhism. As you would know, that the religion or Buddhist mission has picked up many rituals from Hinduism and then carried them forward on their way from China to Japan. So I have not really touched so many of those topics because they make for a very obvious kind of an exercise. So today I am dealing with a few aspects which we found, or I found, were very, very similar, irrespective of its or the religious roots that they had in them. And I will be just posting a presentation and basically talking more about it as we go through. So with your permission, I would like to share the presentation.
Please. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Before we begin, can I just double check if my screen or the presentation on the screen is visible?
It is visible. Thank you.
Again, so as we have been speaking a lot about the topic that we are going to deal with today, it's just identifying how the geography, how the socio-economic conditions, and how the evolution of any civilization has brought about certain activities, certain rituals, certain customs, and certain art forms in every region that is present in this world, every civilization. And so has India and Japan also. And let's talk about a few, beginning with the traditional art forms. So in the traditional art forms, I have selected only one today. One is Kabuki from Japan, which is the Japanese dance drama, and Kathakali, which is from the southern part of India, which is a classical Indian dance form, which actually is very, very similar. It is evident, I think you can see from the pictures, that there are extreme similarities just by looking at how the actors are posing, how they are dressed, what they are trying to say. So basically, Kathakali and Kabuki, I found in their presentation, in their thought process, to be very, very similar. Let's look at certain similarities that they have. So in the pictures, I would just keep the pictures there and talk about them. I have also noted down some similarities. So you can see the expression, the loud expression that is present, basically is because both the art forms basically are for an audience seated in a random space and far away from the performer. So the need for the expressions to be loud, the eyes especially to be so expressive, comes out. And you can see the makeup is also being made in such a way that the figures look dramatic, and there is a color code that the makeup is following. Basically, in Kathakali, any noble character would follow the green color. It also signifies heroism. And similarly, in Japan, also, the color red symbolizes the same kind of qualities, heroism or bravery. So, having any theater a common color code is a concept that is very similar to these both art forms, which I found is very, very astonishing and very similar in the thought process. Secondly, both these art forms carry live music, even in the live music, the drums play a very, very big part in the presentation and in the success of the completion of both these art forms. Kathakali, as you know, they follow the rhythmic pattern and it's kind of a dance which happens on the rhythm. Kabuki also has certain kind of uh, dance sequences, drama sequences, theater sequences, which are very much um, choreographed on the music, especially the drums that are being used. Uh, Another similarity, till a very long time, both these art forms were predominantly male actor dominated. Even the female characters were played by male in both Kathakali and in Kabuki. Not until very recently, Kathakali has been used as, or let's say we can call them as contemporary Kathakali performers who are now inviting new ideas. Even plays of Shakespeare have been performed very recently. In Kabuki also, very few women have really entered the stream and are kind of struggling and finding their way in the mainstream. So these are some of the similarities which I have jotted down. But uh, if we need to really see how these two art forms evolved, Kathakali comes from another ancient form known as the Kutiyatam or Kudiyatam, which was even in a raw form until Kathakali in the late 70s came to its, or in the early 70s came to its real form. And Kabuki also has a predecessor, which is known as Kagura. And Kagura basically deals with all the religious and the mythological storytelling, which was then broken out and brought into Kabuki. The conceptually, not exactly the chronology as I'm probably trying to tell you, but the concept was modified in the same way. And so Kathakali also was evolved later and is still evolving in this art journey. So this is about Kathakali and Kabuki. I just could see one hand that was being raised. Do we take the questions now, or can we wait till the end for the questions to come?
We will wait. We will wait till the end.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Then going ahead, we have some folk art forms which are very, very common, out of which, let's say, the fisherman's dance. In the northern part of Japan, which is known as the Hokkaido, the fishermen kind of developed their own dance and own songs from the folk traditional Japanese songs known as the minyo. And they have come up with this very, very traditional and very famous dance known as the Soran Bushi, which in India has an equivalent in the form of a Koli dance. Koli dance basically comes from the Koli community on the which is predominantly there on the western coast of Maharashtra and a little bit of Karnataka also. And they do have a lot of songs and a lot of dances. So it's a completely different genre, both in Japan and in India also. So the Soran Bushi is predominantly later on followed by the bone dance, which is also another traditional form. But Koli is just a genre in itself. What is very, very common about the lyrics of these songs, or the motivation or the impulse behind having these dances and songs, is that the phrase that please heave or please row is repeated in both Soran Bushi songs and the Koli songs also. So in Soran Bushi, they use this word called the koiso, which means to row or to paddle. And in the Koli, the same word is actually known as wallav. So wallav or wallavne comes from the Maharashtrian verb is to row. So these words are shout out loud in the middle of the song as an act to encourage the fishermen to go faster or to do their job well. So that was when I actually heard it the first time. I was like, okay, this is very, very similar to something that I know from the Koli background. So the Soran Bushi and the Koli are really, really very, very similar in terms of why and how they are being portrayed. Okay, so going ahead, let's look at some of the festivals. In festivals, predominantly the harvest festival, which in Japanese also is known as the Koshogatsu. Koshogatsu actually means a small new year, which happens at almost the same time frame when we in India celebrate the Makar Sankranti, the Pongal, the Lohri, or the Magh Bihu, as it is known in Assam. there are so many common things in these festivals. I did take part of them, part in most of them, and I could realize that the psychology, the kind of need for these festivals to happen were almost so similar that I thought uh, this is just a whole extended part of what I've been doing all these years in my country. So some common points here are both are harvest festivals. About harvest festivals in India also, we have two harvest festivals or two times when the harvest happens. One is in autumn and one is in the early winters, or let's say pre-spring. Similarly, in Japan also, it happens two times. We will talk about them at leisure. So when do these happen? Basically around the 14th and 15th of January. We all know Makar Sankrant is basically celebrated around that time, and Koshogatsu also is celebrated at that time. You can see the celebration in Koshogatsu, what the men are wearing, even women actually are wearing, are artifacts like shoes and dress props that are made from the rice harvest that have come out. And on our right side, where we can see in Makar Sankrant also, people are celebrating with the harvest that has been just plucked from the farms right then. Uh, it is also a gesture to welcome the summer solstice during the same time, even in Japan and in India. In some cultures in India, it is also celebrated as a new year. And as I already said, in Japan, the term Koshogatsu actually means a small new year. Okay. So both that is also very similar. And to have a new year other than the English calendar, which is basically based on the lunar calendars, but mostly according to the harvest and festivals, is kind of very common in both the cultures. Also, in Makar Sankrant, we have an offering that we probably give to God or some of our loved ones and relatives, which have the harvest, the produce that has come out with some other things. For example, sugarcane, some sweets, and some kind of gift items which are very small. And similarly in Japan also, they put together a bunch or a packet which has a lot of local produce that has come out right now, and some sweets which is known as mochi. They also have a ceremony to make and prepare the mochi publicly. So that this kind of gathering and procession that is being carried out is also common to both India and Japan, which is a public celebration of any kind of festival. Uh, then there are specially dedicated songs and dances which celebrate the harvest, and the lyrics of these are very similar. Obviously thanking God for the harvest that has been just harvested and the produce, and also hoping for the next year to be the same or even more prosperous, which is very common both in India and in Japan. So it's astonishing that even now, when people who are non-farmers or like people in the city who do not actually go and harvest anything still celebrate the festival. Even in Japan, in modern cities and towns, even if they are not farmers anymore, do celebrate the harvest festival, same as what Makar Sankranti or Pongal or Lohri is being celebrated in India. So it's even though there is no practical relevance for anybody who is non-farmer to celebrate any harvest, the custom and the tradition of it being in the form of a festival now is present in both India and Japan. Moving ahead. coming back to some more festivals, there is a festival in Japan which is very famous, known as the Obon Festival or Obon Matsuri, which is on the similar lines of what we have, not exactly as a festival, but as a tradition that is followed in India, known as the Pitru Paksha. These festivals, or the festivals that are related to the people or the ancestors who are not amongst us right now, is there traditionally, even in China, celebrated as the Ghost Festival in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand and Philippines. Just the concept and psychology that has come from Buddhism prevail in these regions. However, in Japan and India, it is celebrating or offering something to the spirits of our ancestors, and not really celebrating a ghost festival like Halloween or something. Okay, so the psychology behind them is more common than the other geographies, is what I'm trying to imply here. So it is very, very astonishing that in the year 2020, both Obon Festival and Pitru Paksh started on the 2nd of September, and which is very, very similar. It actually happens when the lunar cycle completes. Probably in Japan, it is the 7th moon, and in India also it is the 7th or the 8th moon. But because in India we have it for 15 days, so it is the start and end time does vary. In Japan, however, the celebration goes on for 1 day, and traditionally, in the modern Japan times, whatever festivals are celebrated, the holidays are matched to the nearest weekend, making it into a long weekend for people to enjoy more of vacation time. So it's most of the festivals that are celebrated in Japan celebrate their holidays either on a Friday or a Monday. So the days have been adjusted, but according to the lunar calendar, both the Obon festival and the Pitra, they start almost in the same time frame. And again, as I already said, the autumn harvest festivals that come to our country as probably Padwa or some other form. There are different types of Padwas followed in different cultures, but so are in Japan also. And the common factor is that in this autumn harvest festival, there are concepts of bonfire that take place both in Japan and also in India. However, in modern day Japan, having a bonfire needs a lot of permissions from the government. So the rate of bonfires now has little gone down in the modern present townships. But in India, we do have the bonfire basically in the northeast of India. We have a lot of it, and also some parts of Himachal Pradesh and Uttaranchal also. So this is how it comes. Another aspect, probably not in the form of a celebration, but after somebody passes away in Japan, they have a ceremony called as the Oshoshiki, which is basically a day that has been celebrate, or let's say decided for all the known people to come and pay their respect to the person who has passed away, and have some snacks probably, and make some offerings and say some good things about the person who has passed away. However, it is followed by some alcohol drinking also, in order to celebrate the life of the person who has passed away. Even though that is not there in India, in the Gujarati community, we have a concept called as the Beswana. And in the Beswana, we have a day that has been selected for everybody to come at the same time, same day, and pay their respects to the person who has passed away, and meet the family of the loved one, of the passed away person, or the loved ones of the passed away person, and pay their respects. So that is also pretty similar between Japan and one of our cultures in India. Coming to the deities. So deities, here I would like to say that a few of these deities have been introduced to Japan through Buddhism. But having said that, there are some which are not being introduced by the Buddhist religious journey and are very, very original to Japan, but have a striking similarity with the deities in India. So starting with our beloved Ganesh, which is also there in Japan. And this is a statue that has been placed in the Fukuoka Tower or in front of it. Then coming to Lord Brahma. As you can see, the lotus or the seat is very, very common. And also the number of arms and limbs and the heads basically all are very, very similar. Then comes Saraswati. So Saraswati, the goddess Benzaiten, is a concept which actually has come to Japan from China. Even the instrument that the goddess is holding is actually originally a Chinese instrument. But these are a part of something called as the 7 lucky gods, which Japan has, and are other than what their natural deities would be. And there is a striking similarity. If you can see even the posture, the kind of the way the instruments are held, and the goddess, both Saraswati and Benzaiten, are not only for music and art, but are also for learning something, which we in India call as the Vidya. And then we go to Lord Shiva. So here there is Shiva Parvati, both in a couple, which is also there in India, and both are riding the bull, if you can see, which is a part of the Nandi. And the Trishul is also pretty much similar, if you can see, and is also, it's very interesting that Daikoten or Lord Shiva in Japanese culture is also known as the Lord of completion, which we also sometimes call the Lord of destruction, but is actually the destruction is only for the new creation that can be possible later. So it's the same concept that is followed in Japan also. And Daiko then is also considered a god for chefs, basically. A lot of chefs also follow him as their deity. Then he is also the lord who is angry or can do the Tandava in the same way as it is in India. Moving ahead to Vishwakarma. So in Japan also, so the Bhikkhukatsuma is basically credited to have been a main creator of the earth in Japanese traditional rituals also. In their text also, in the epics also, he's mentioned to be the creator and is definitely considered as the god for people in commercial activities or business, like very much in India, that is similarly being worshipped in both our countries as the god of business or creation. Then we have Lord Indra. So he is mainly considered as the thunder god in Japan. Very, very popular. And it's so exactly how Devendra or Indra is supposed to be the the main, or let's say the king of gods. I don't know if the phrase is correct, but the main god or the god of gods. Uh, so similarly, the Taishaku in Japanese culture is also named as the king god, or known as the god of uh, controlling the rain, thunder, and main amongst other gods also. So I think Indra is the main person for the heaven here in Indian mythology. So similarly, the Taishaku then is also very important in the Japanese beliefs. Coming to the language, now here is something which I found to be the gateway of something that is very interesting in both these cultures. So, sorry, I've written these phrases in Japanese, but the whole point is that I want you to not read and make your assumptions, but just listen to it as something interesting and something I found very curious. All right, so we have some idioms and some phrases put together, which are very common that we use. First comes okane or kin, which is known as money in Japan. So money, even though it's the currency right now, before currency, it was gold. And before that, in India also, we consider wealth as Lakshma or Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is something that shines. And if you look at this character, it also signifies these two small upward rising dashes that we have, and the one in middle supposed to show the glow, which means Lakshmi, that is shining, or something that is bright, or something that has a glitter, which is gold. So the concept of wealth being gold or something that shines is very common to both of our cultures. I am, when I say these similarities are not so common amongst other cultures, I presume that you already know I'm pretty much hinting towards the Western culture that is now universally mostly accepted and followed when it comes to currency and calendars and all the other systems that we have absorbed. So the concepts are pretty similar in against the Western cultures is what I mean to imply here. Similarly, the next phrase that we have is ittekimasu. This is a phrase that is used when you are leaving your house, basically. It's interesting that how sometimes when we say that I'm going, our parents would say that don't say I'm going, say I'm coming. So I'm coming back. So similarly, in Japan also, we do not say I am going out. I say that I'll go and come back. So similarly, in most of the languages in India, in Bengali, in Marathi, in many other languages, even in Hindi, we do not say jatahu or I'm going jachi. We will say ashchi, or we'll say yetoe, or we'll say arau jake atahu. So it's the same phrase that exactly is being used in Japanese, which was very surprising for me. Even actually, I being a Maharashtrian, in Marathi, we actually say the same phrase that I'll go and come back. Then there are some idioms that have been used. What is interesting here is that all these idioms are related to body parts. And the first thing here is not such a pleasant thing to say, but it is atama ni kuru, or to come in one's head. Okay. In Japanese language, the verb come and go are relative and are being swapped according to from which place you are either coming or going to. So in many languages in India, we also say the phrase that if some person or somebody or something irritates you, you say that he just just went in my head. That is not a very good English translation because the phrase doesn't exist. But in Marathi, actually, we say dokyat jane, which is very much similar to the concept of atamanikuru. Then we have the term khao or dasu. Khao here means face, and dasu is to show or portray. So in English, this phrase is completely differently used as showing your face somewhere or to put up your face somewhere. So, but in our Indian languages, we definitely, when we need to peep somewhere or just make our presence felt, even though we may not be there by heart and soul, we say, I'll just, show my face and come, which is a bad English translation that sometimes we use, but it's a very, very amazing term that is there in Japanese and in our Indian languages, to just show your face somewhere and come, which means make a slight appearance and come back. Then we have te, which means hands. Teo nuku is to pull out our hands, pull off our hands. Again, in English, the phrase is used in a very different way. But in our Indian languages, we use this phrase exactly in the similar way that it is used in the Japanese language, which means haath khich lena, kisi cheez se, or to just withdraw yourself from that activity. So it's very, very similar. In English, however, this phrase means that if something is not, if you are incapable of doing something and it goes beyond your hands or beyond your capacity, then you say that it is, I need to pull my hand out, or because it is beyond my capacity. However, it's not so in Japanese and in Indian cultures. We just say when we withdraw something, even though it's voluntarily or because of some reasons, but the phrase is used exactly in the similar fashion. Then there's another phrase related to the hand, which means tega mijikai. So te again means hands, mijikai means short. So when you say my hands are short, okay, means I'm not resourceful enough to do this. Okay, a phrase very much used in basically Urdu. We say haath tang hona, or also in Hindi, or in many other languages that are spoken across India, we use this phrase, which is exactly similar in Japanese also. So tega mijikai means I'm not equipped enough, or I'm not resourceful enough to do a task, which I couldn't find any equivalent for this phrase in English. Then later we come to the concept of hirune. Hirune is the actual word for it comes from French language, which is an equivalent, which is siesta, or the sleep that one has in the afternoon. I'm very sad about the fact that English doesn't have an original word for this. If there is, please let me know. I couldn't find a lot. They actually also refer to it as siesta. But I love this concept that in Sanskrit also, we have a word and a term for it known as the Vamakukshi. And this is a beautiful concept of having some time or some rest or some sleep in the afternoon, which also the Japanese people have recognized the merit for and named as Hirune. Then later on we say Hana ga takai. Hana here means nose. Takai means to be tall. Okay. So translates as to be snobbish. But what is interesting is we have the similar phrase in Hindi or in some other languages in India. We say nak chada. So nak chada or hana ga takai is somebody who is snobbish or has a lot of pride, which is not the good pride actually. So a lot of ego, we would say. So somebody who has a lot of ego has hana ga takai. So which is very interesting. an idiom that is related to the exact body part that we also refer to. Later on, the last one, coming to Mimiga Karui. Mimi here means ears. Karui is to be light. So a person who has Mimiga Karui means that he believes in anything anyone says, which is exactly the term used in many of our Indian languages. In Marathi, definitely we say halkya kanacha, which means a person who has light-weighted ears, which actually in English would make no sense to anybody if said. But having known the cultural significance of what it actually means makes it to be a very interesting observation and a phrase that is very common in both the languages. So I think, thank you. With that, I'll conclude the presentation.
Thank you. I think I was very amazed that though, in fact, when you think of India itself, it is such a diverse and multicultural environment. But you find, as you mentioned in your talk, so many threads which are common between our own cultures, different parts of India. And now you have taken it to a different plane. And you said across these oceans, when you see Japan, surprisingly, they are also very similar common threads are there. In fact, linked with this, and when you mentioned about the dance forms of Kabuki and Kathakali. So one of the questions which has been asked is there some similarity in its origin?
Yes.
And how can you explain a little more about that?
Yes. Yes, that's a very nice question. I think it's from Sawa-san also. Yeah, so let me answer it. Yes, the origins probably, it's very difficult to actually pinpoint any place or any point where somebody must have thought the need for this art form to be in the way it is. Both have been evolved over the years, and but basically the roots or the impulse behind having Kabuki is not really the same as Kathakali. It's basically, it was supposed to be a drama or a performance done by ladies to express the present socio conditions, but was banned by the government then, and so evolved into the male actors having dressed as women and perform. And later on, a lot of contributions and a lot of Kabuki play and drama writers also contributed heavily into having the modern day Kabuki in its place. So probably no, the answer is that the origins are not similar. You may find certain need for any theatrical expression to be there to be common, but that, however, would not contribute for a heavy statement for us to make that both have the same origins or same roots. Kathakali also, in the Chola period, the king wrote a lot of plays for Kathakali, modern day Kathakali, or then form that which I mentioned was Kutiyattam. The Kutiyattam plays then later on then became the main Kathakali performances, and a lot of grooming did happen, but not until the 17th century that it came to its present complete form that you can see now.
Right.
Which comes in.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. But since we are on this topic of similarities, though origins being, and one of the differences also you mentioned that the origin itself is different between these two dance forms.
Yes.
Is there any other differences between these two?
Yes, there's one very, very basic difference is that the actors or the performers in Kathakali do not speak. They do not have dialogues. It's their
Oh,
expression and the music that goes on, and the people in the background who sing are basically narrating and depicting the story, which is being enacted. However, in Kabuki, there is a lot of voice modulation that happens. They do not speak in their natural voice and accent. So it is also this is it's a very deep topic, and to talk about Kabuki and its origin, will need lots of hours. So there is a system of delivering the dialogues in a very particular way. Also, the composition of music is not trance based, which is there in Kathakali. So it's a drumming and strumming that happens continuously, and the performers perform on that to the beat. In Kabuki, however, the music or the beats, they are timed according to the punctuations and the punches that the story carries. So
right.
it's choreographed and designed in a different way.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes. And of course, what you mentioned about the color coding of emotions, I think
Yes.
that was very, very interesting. Green for here and red there, and very, very, very expression both. And later on, you talked about, of course, the color coding, but even the
Yes.
expressions of Soran Bushi and Kohli, and how that also very, very, very similar.
Correct.
Yeah.
So about the color code, if I may just add one line.
Yes.
So why this color code is very significant and very, I would say, culturally significant is what it gives us is as even when a kabuki artist appears on the stage, the audience knows who the character is or what type of a character is just by his paintings, and they do give a shout out and applaud him or welcome him on the stage. Similarly, even in Kathakali, when the whole sequence of Ravan and or the Kumbhakaran is going, and when Sri Ram appears, the cheer that people give just by looking at the green color of the character is something I think in a drama or in a theater form, to have that kind of a connectivity with the audience just by following the color code is something that these both cultures have thought about originally.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, as you mentioned, because of the distance between the performer and the audience,
Yes.
it makes a lot of sense if you have such a clear demarcation of whether it's a good character or a baddie. Yeah,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, I have a comment from Takashi-san here.
Yeah,
The origins of Kabuki is thought to be, yes, correct, definitely. And now, yes, it is. It is very similar color and costume also. Yes,
yeah.
Takashi-san, thank you so much.
There is one more point which has come up, which is similar. But your own favorite instrument is Sarod,
Yes, sir.
and we have a variety of instruments in India.
Yes.
Are there similar great deal of variety? Do you find in the Japanese music scene?
Uh, Unfortunately, not.
Oh,
Most of the present day Japanese instruments, or what we could say as the classical form of Japanese instruments, are instruments that are um, being taken from China, basically the Japanese koto or the biwa. All these are Chinese instruments actually, and in in our set of instruments, which is the Indian set of instruments, mm, they all have a parent instrument, the veena, and from where they have actually branched out and become different instruments.
okay,
Um,
okay.
the entire concept of having a solo instrumental, which in India is also not very old when it comes to the journey of music that the Indian subcontinent has. So probably around 500 to 600 years back, actually solo performances were thought about, and the concept actually excelled not before 300 years or 400 years actually. So it is something that post 16th century came into play in India a lot, and Japanese instruments having solo performances are still something that happens in a group setting or in a composed setting. However, the improvisation factor is not present. The folk music from Okinawa played on shamisen. It's an instrument known with three guts and having a skin at the belly, is pretty famous. There are koto solos. Koto also um, basically plays songs and compositions, but they are all pre-composed and not improvised.
I see. I see. Oh, very interesting. Um, Tell me, just a follow-on question to this. Since your first love was drums and then you shifted to Sarod,
Yes.
what is the status as far as drums are concerned? I mean, is
Yeah.
there a variety there?
Yes, there is a variety in Japanese drums. There is basically the most famous one, which we would say is the taiko. And the taiko have performances which do follow the same crescendo patterns that any drum culture would follow. And there is a main huge bass drum and other small drums. I'm not going so much into the technicalities and naming them all because it would take us a lot of time. But yes, and then the main big drum holds the bass rhythm, and there are other drums who play with different kind of rhythmic patterns and different rhythmic variations, and they do build up a crescendo, and it's amazing, the drums that are followed there. In India, we have the Punjabi drumming system, we have the Carnatic drumming system, which is the folk part.
Right.
And in classical also we have the mridangam, we have the pakhwaj in the Hindustani, we have the tabla, obviously. So all these, I think the classical drumming is very, very different from uh, what the
Folk.
folk would follow. But our folk drumming system can be very, very close to the taiko of Japan.
Okay.
In classical Indian classical drumming, we follow the concept of rhythm, lay, and basically we make certain variations to them, and the appreciation and beauty of that type of drumming performances is little different than having it in a trance or a rhythm or any kind of chand is the right word for it,
Right.
which is followed in the folk.
Wonderful. Just one about the deities that you mentioned.
Yes.
There are different questions on that. First obvious question was that at the end of each name, there is a TEN or ten.
Yes.
Is it something similar to San that you use, or is it different?
Actually, the word ten here means heavenly or
Heaven.
heaven. Yeah.
Okay.
So somebody who is heavenly or has that kind of a stature,
Okay.
or stature or status, which is actually much above san. So even in Japanese, we have a, a kun or a chan, which is said to the younger ones, san, that is said to somebody
Okay.
equivalent, and then there is sama. Sama is actually God or king, who is even greater. Then probably comes Shisho or Sensei, who is the master or the teacher. And then there is the Tenno. Tenno is actually also the name of or the Japanese emperor is called as the Tenno. And anybody who is a Ten, so Tenno or the Japanese emperor actually is referred to as God. Basically, he is the God. So he was the word of God and he is the God. So actually anybody who is at that level is somebody ten.
Right.
So he's the
Right.
God.
Okay. Thank you. I think that was
No
But
problem.
since we are on deities,
Mhm.
and you mentioned a few of pictorially you caught it. But are
Mhm.
they worshipped similarly? Is that on, or is it just
Yes.
the image?
No, I think in the present day, a lot of Japanese people are, I wouldn't say atheist, but irreligious.
Okay.
There's a certain word for it which I don't recall, but in Japanese it's known as mushukyo.
Okay.
Mushukyo. They do not exactly follow any particular religion. They are spiritual and they have their own beliefs, but they are not religious. So there is no worship that happens as much as it happens in India. There are no rituals that happen. In some Buddhist shrines or Buddhist temples, as they are known as, there is, however, some procession that is carried out, some ceremonies that are carried out, but not so extensively as it is in India.
Right. Right. So, to take you back a bit to the first topic, the music part, we have within India, you have the Carnatic and the Hindustani, these two major
Yes,
streams. Is
yes.
there something similar, classical scene of music in Japan?
Um, no, actually, there isn't. Um, the classical music in Japan basically could not flourish so much in the medieval era because of a lot of what we could say the civil wars that were going on, or the throne, the annexations, and the tribes having a lot of fights among themselves
Right,
caused
right.
the music and art scene heavily. However, when in the Meiji era,
Yeah,
music and literature and dance did definitely flourish. And later on, when in the Edo period, we say when the capital was shifted to Edo, and that, which is the present day Tokyo,
right.
then a lot of socio-economic stability did come to Japan before the world wars, and it did excel. But the need for a separate genre of classical music somehow did not arise in Japan. It always and predominantly has remained as a part of the literature and the theater that is being followed.
But is it popular?
It is very popular, yes.
Oh,
Um, I think the folk dances, the Soranbushi, is extremely popular. I think every Japanese person once in their life must have learned this song, undoubtedly, or the dance. I would say so.
right.
It is extensively taught in schools, and everything is being spread very properly. Then there is um, the bone dance that I just mentioned also is very
Right.
very widely spread and popular. Everybody does learn it. It's a very nice dance that has been that revolves around the Japanese fan, the sensu, and there are a lot of different movement that go on, and there's also the balancing of the fan that is very very significant. Least to say, it is very difficult to master.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, so yes, we have a confirmation. Every Japanese knows Soran Bushi. This is very famous, and it's coming from Takahashi-san. Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. Yes,
very.
it is a very very popular form.
So, going back to what you mentioned about Pitru Paksha and similarity between that, and are there any other religious beliefs that are common between these two countries?
Uh, I would say there are millions such beliefs which are very 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 common in both these kind of cultures.
Right.
It all comes to certain superstitions about cutting nails. Uh, lot of common myths
Okay.
definitely are present in the religious similarities. Um, what I would definitely like to say is the sense or the even the culture of having an offering to God is very, very similar.
Right.
Also, if you may allow, I would like to combine in this answer a question to Ms. Jyoti, who has asked me about Shintoism.
Right.
So, Shintoism and a religious belief that happens here in India is which is known as the Nirgun.
Right.
So we do follow two beliefs, which is Sagun and Nirgun.
Right.
So mostly all the deities would come in the Sagun category, and in the Nirgun, which is very, very similar to the Shintoism or Shinto way of thinking, which actually makes nature the god. They do not have any one particular idol or deity that could be worshipped. So God is everywhere and everything has God, which is the Nirgun basically way of thinking. And also our Saint Kabir has written a lot about the Nirgun in his poetry. Similarly, in Shinto writings also, in the Nirgun category, a lot of that what has been written, sometimes it comes in the form of a haiku or sometimes it comes in form of some religious text, also kind of denotes to the same factor as what the religious belief with Nirgun is. It's also um, very interesting to note that when Kabir has written about Nirgun, he has broken sometimes from his pattern of dohas and actually written 4 lines, similar pattern that is followed in the haiku also. So
Wow.
mostly a good haiku or a good religious haiku consists of 4 lines, and they have the same kind of arrangement of words and the deities or the religious beliefs that are common to both of them.
Oh, wonderful. It's a really insightful observation that you have given us. Since we were talking about the various idioms and you talked about the various body parts linked with our expressions and so on, there is one called Iseki Nichao, which is.
Okay. Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little more about?
Yes. So the it's a uh, what can I say? It's a phrase. Um, Isseki nicho.
Oh,
So Isseki means one stone, and nicho means two birds.
ah,
So two birds and one stone.
okay,
Um, Actually, the the basic origin of this phrase is found in Greece or Greek mythology,
right,
uh, where some king actually did it once and then has come into play. Um, that is why I don't know if it could be credited to um, something that India and Japan has in common. But an observation, and here I would like to specify that such idioms and phrases, there are so many that are common in both India and Japan. But however, they also have an English equivalent to them. Uh, there are some that I found are credited to have originated in the east and some probably in the west, which that is why I did not include them.
right,
But Isseki Nicho actually is very interesting for me because in my native language, that is Marathi, also we use the same words, that two birds and one stone.
right, right,
Uh, Similarly, there are so many others which are very, very similar to when it comes to the type of words that are being used and the type of geographical type of natural phenomena that are being used to express these phrases or idioms or sayings, as we say, which I think is very, very interesting because even though the adoptions of them are found in English language or other languages in the West, the terminology is different. And the terminology that Japan and India probably sticks to are very similar, which kind of sometimes shocks me.
right, right. Just taking you again back to the deities and religion, religious beliefs, and so on. Many of the art forms, as well as the musical streams that we have in India, are more themes based on devotion or taken from our epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and so on.
Yes.
Is there something very similar going on in Japan?
Um,
What are the themes? What are the themes on which they play these art forms?
it is again in the form of a dance drama.
Right.
Actually, conceptually, it is more close to the Kathakali form. It is actually known as Kagura. Kagura. Okay,
Right.
Kagura is one of the very, very old forms where the tales of gods or goddesses are being depicted by two main characters who do not speak. They do not have any dialogues given to them. There is music that goes on, and there are different singers and performers who facilitate the performance. But they are being expressed basically in the or what has been expressed is basically all the religious and the mythological tales that have come up. If you could look on the net later on, it's a very elaborate subject. It's known as Kagura.
Right.
Kagura. They also sometimes have certain sequences which are very similar to the Ram, Ravan, or in Mahabharat the Arjun and Duryodhan kind of sequences that have, and the way they are performed going in circles to dramatize the whole fact is pretty much similar, and that is one of the major expressions that is credited to religious um, expressions in Japan now. In songs, I haven't come across a lot of songs that are religious in nature. Um, the original folklore, which is the Minyo, basically talk about farmers or fishermen, as we said
Right.
earlier,
Right.
but not much. So if you are talking about the Bhakti movement
Right.
that our country did
Correct.
come across has probably not happened or happened very much earlier sometime in Japan.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Since we are on the cultural music side, can we, here we have many, many ragas and
Yes.
many tunes or ragas, and therefore, in the Indian system, classical,
Yes.
both the two major systems.
Mhm.
So, is there something very similar there as well?
No, I wouldn't say it is similar. So just to talk about this topic, the RAG system is very, very unique to India, and basically all the varieties that it has, the complexities is second to none.
Okay.
However, in the folk music across the world, there
Right.
are a lot of pentatonic scales. I wouldn't call them raga scales
Right.
that are visible. Japan has taken some of them, but they can be traced to originally from being from China.
Okay.
And these scales are basically variations of something which we call as rag bhup or bhupali
Right.
here, which is a pentatonic scale. And the variations could be a form of rag bibhas or vibhas, rag bhupeshwari. So these are certain note changes that happen in the pentatonic scale, which are being followed mostly in the Chinese region, of which some compositions have been taken from Japan. However, they are composition oriented and not improvised forms.
Oh,
Yeah, other than that, the rags that like Bhairavi or Basan Mukhari are found in the Middle Eastern region,
right.
but these are again scales. The concept of rag and scale are something very different. Again, so scale could be just a set of notes that can randomly be played and improvised upon, but rag has a certain structure and a lot of do's and don'ts, which definitely have not gone anywhere else out of our subcontinent.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do follow it as a very unique thing to our Indian subcontinent.
Very good, very good. I think some of the Japanese friends who are on this
Yes.
can maybe start learning
Oh, definitely.
this unique aspect about Indian culture. Yeah.
That'll be nice.
You talked about many things, including deities and uh, music, art forms, language. What about food? Is there something? Is there some similarities you ever found?
Uh, Similarities of food are so, I mean, they're heavily connected to the geographical condition of any region.
Right.
So in India, to even summarize the concept of food
Yes.
is an impossible task because food and language in India changes after every 15-20 kilometers, which is so it is very difficult to summarize certain things. But yes, uh, from the coastal areas, the staple being rice and fish is something that Japan has definitely picked up upon. Um, then in Northeast India, the concept of pickled food is very much
Yes.
prevalent,
Very true.
and such is also in Japan. So we have pickled ginger, pickled cucumber, and a lot of pickled food used as side dishes,
Right.
basically. And what the difference or the uniqueness is that the cooking in India, or our what we call as the Indian cooking, where we use oil to flavor the food,
Right.
and that's why we flavor the oil first and then put in the food, and then the flavor is being captured
Right.
by the food. So that happens in a different way in Japan. So food similarities other than rice and fish, I don't think are a lot in common.
Right. Right.
But Japanese food is amazing, and you all must definitely try it.
Right. Yeah, it is sometimes a challenge for vegetarians, but these days, even that is changing. I think we are able to get something to eat, we vegetarians.
Yes.
So,
Yes, but for vegetarians, we do have in Japan, and what is probably a little common to South India also is the use of fermented foods.
correct.
There is a lot of
Correct.
fermented food that is being used. Basically, the original miso paste is
Correct.
also fermented soybean, which is very much used both in Japan and something similar in South India also. Uh, so yes,
Right.
there now vegetarians have a lot of options in Japan. I don't know, sir, when was the last time you visited, but things are much better for vegetarians now in Japan. The vegan culture has picked up. A lot of Indian restaurants have flourished now. Maybe 15 or 10 years back, it was still a challenge to get yourself the food you desire. So the best option was to cook it yourself. Uh, so now, however, it's not that difficult in Japan. Also, the smartphones have made it really easier to locate certain restaurants that you are looking for.
You are spot on because I went about 18 months ago and
Mhm.
we had this locators to locate these vegan foods places.
Absolutely.
Some of them are small and exotic,
Yes.
but food was excellent in all the places
Amazing.
that we
Very nice.
went.
Very nice. That's
Exactly.
nice to
A
hear.
few years ago, using traditional maps uh, would have been impossible to locate these people.
Correct.
Because just to share one small incident, we reached the place. It says, Google says you have reached the place, but we can't see it. So then we went to the blog site of that restaurant. And
Mhm.
there he says, such a thing was there that if you can't locate it, look down. So when we started looking down, and it was in the basement of the. So that was a very interesting experience that we had.
Yes, definitely.
So a wonderful, just one light-hearted question for you.
Yes.
We say, for example, when we have hiccups, we say that we have somebody is remembering us. This is many cultures in India has this, especially South Indian.
Yes.
And in Japan, I understand that if somebody sneezes,
yes.
they say that, oh, somebody is remembering you. Again, you mentioned about the body parts, but
yes,
this is again something very interesting.
Yes, it's very, very interesting. As I said, these small similarities are huge in number. It was virtually impossible to really cover all of them up in this presentation.
No, I think.
But on a day-to-day basis, as we speak, as we interact more and more with our Japanese friends,
Yes.
We do come to know so many things.
Yes.
Even as small as removing your footwear outside the house.
Correct. Exactly.
Even though the way it is arranged is a little different, but the concept still does prevail that you do not take your footwear inside. So right from such small and common things to really heavy things that we try to touch upon today, there are really a lot of similarities.
Thank you, Anupam Joshi-san. It's a wonderful tour de force. You have taken us to the wonderful, as you said, you didn't talk about what was obvious. And
Yes.
you took us through many deeper observations. Some of it comes from your own personal observations, some taken from what others have also observed. But it has helped us, I'm sure, helped me as an important learning for me is that what we thought was a very diverse and very different culture has some of it has roots, similar roots, but many of them have evolved very similar to ours. And you have taken us through such a wonderful journey, and we are very much obliged. And thank you from IJSC and from IIMB community, and of course, the global partners that we have across the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.